Jason Verrett's injury is really serious, and it's terrible news. They fear it's a torn ACL. They don't know it's a torn ACL, but let's assume it is. We talked about this all offseason. We said, it's great that the Niners have two quarterbacks, and they're in a position where if Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt, they can bring in a very talented other quarterback backup. But I think we all said, that's not the only important position. What about cornerback? It's not as important as quarterback, but it's very important. And Jason Verrett's a really good player, and there's no one good behind him. And he has a history of injuries. So it's not like this is hindsight. We were talking about this. Now, in the moment, I was thinking, Kyle Shanahan, why did you have him on the field up 24 with 7 minutes left? And that's a valid point. I don't understand that. I understand you have to play some of your starters, but Jason Verrett should be the person on your team that you're being the most careful with, because he's never made it through a full 16-game season, and he often gets hurt right away like this. So they weren't careful with Jason Verrett. But I think so Kyle messed up. But I think what's probably the bigger point here is that this was bound to happen. This was probably bound to happen. I'm sorry. But it's his history. He's almost 30 years old. Last year should have been looked at by the organization as a fluke until he could prove otherwise. And they gave him the appropriate contract. It was cheap it gave him the opportunity to get, bonuses and stuff if he'd stayed healthy. So they protected themselves, and he bet on himself, but they didn't on a corner who's not good, and a 5th round pick on a corner who's promising, but not Jason Verrett. And now you're in a situation where the starting corners, Emmanuel Mosley's hurt too. He may not play next week. So at least for 1 week, your starting corners could be Diamador Lenore and Ambry Thomas, two essentially day 3 draft picks. That's not good. We saw this coming from a mile away. And I think the point was just over stocking resources at quarterback doesn't guarantee you anything. You can have all the insurance you want at quarterback with Trey Lance, but be thin at corner and be in the same position. They could probably beat the Eagles without Jason Verrett. Can they beat the Packers without Jason Verrett? I don't know. I'm not saying they can't, but everything's so much more difficult now. You saw what happened to this team. They gave up 16 points in 7 minutes without Jason Verrett on the field, and the Lions were driving to score again. They came close, and they're the worst. So, when I was at the stadium, my first thought was, man, Kyle messed up. This was avoidable. But now I'm thinking maybe it wasn't avoidable. Maybe the Niners had too much belief in Jason Verrett. And recently they've been talking a lot about how belief has worked out for them. Like they talked about, we're sticking by Jalen Hurd because look what sticking by Jason Verrett did for us. That worked out. It's almost like that's an organizational strategy now, is to believe in injury-prone players because Jason Verrett played 14 games last year. So they believed in Jalen Hurd. They believed in Jason Verrett. They didn't believe in Jimmy. Jimmy played well today. Other guys who were injury-prone got injured. Interesting. So what should the Niners have done differently? In retrospect, see, I didn't say this at the time, but I think it's probably pretty obvious at this point. We can all agree that they should have taken a corner in round 2. After taking Trey Lance, they should have taken a corner. What they did was they traded down 5 spots and took Aaron Banks, who was a healthy scratch today. Then they used the pick they got by trading down 5 spots to trade up in the 3rd round for Trey Sermon, who was a healthy scratch today. They view him as the worst running back on the team. So you got cute. You took 2 players on offense at positions that, frankly, don't need to be drafted before round 5. Guard and running back. Instead of just staying put in the 2nd round, and taking Asante Samuel Jr., who looks like a quality corner. He's on the Chargers. They overthought that one. They could have had Asante Samuel Jr. right now, who's good. Instead, we'll see what they got. They're going to have Diamador Lenore, who looks promising, and Josh Norman. Thank goodness they signed Josh Norman. Maybe they'll sign Richard Sherman. I don't know. They're that desperate that they have to call up Richard Sherman and see where he's at. But they're probably going to be starting Emmanuel Mosley and Diamondor Lenore all year. We'll see. I don't think quarterbacks are going to be afraid of those guys. Like Lenore was okay. He gave up some catches today. He also had a pass interference penalty. I don't think quarterbacks are afraid of him yet. Maybe they will be in the future. I don't think quarterbacks are going to be afraid of Emmanuel Mosley. They're afraid of Jason Verrett. They don't really throw at him. And he doesn't need that much help. You can help the other corner. I think what we saw was as soon as Jason Verrett went out the game, all of a sudden, Jared Goff got courage. He was like the cowardly lion before that. And all of a sudden, he got a heart. He got courage. All of a sudden, he's just throwing all over the place with no conscience. We might see that. And the other thing is, the Eagles, their quarterback today, Jalen Hurts, had a phenomenal game. What's going to happen there? I'm paying for good internet service here, Marriott. Anyway, it's not catastrophic, but it's close to it. I was skeptical on the Niners being a Super Bowl contender before this injury. Now I'm thinking this is pretty bad. The Niners have probably, if Josh Norman doesn't work out, they're going to need to find a way to trade for a corner. And the last thing I want to say, I talk about this every year. The Niners need to be spending a first or a second round pick on a corner every year. Maybe sometimes you wait until round 3, but no later than that. It's a really important position, and the shelf life isn't very long. You're pretty much over the hill at 28. So, and they get very expensive if they're good at 26, 25. So just keep drafting them. Like the second and third round picks should be corners and wide receivers pretty much exclusively. Just keep drafting them until you get a Hall of Famer and then sign them. But guard in round 2, no. Running back in round 3, no. Wide receiver. And the problem with the Niners is they don't have first round picks. So these need to be their top picks now, corner next year. Anyway, Grant, did you go get Sherman now? I don't want him. I don't think so. I think you give Josh Norman a chance. But between Josh Norman, Diamondor Lenore, and Emmanuel Mosley, you might have something, but Mosley has injury issues too.